Have we hit the wall? I've got some thoughts. Let's begin.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Welcome to the season premiere episode of season number 10 of Debt Free in 30. As frequent listeners and viewers will know, I'm Doug Hoyes, the co-founder along with Ted Michaelis of Hoyes Michaelis & Associates, a personal insolvency firm here in Ontario, Canada. We've been busy. Personal insolvency filings dropped significantly during the lockdowns in 2020 and continued to fall through 2022, but now they are almost back up to where they were in 2019. In the first 6 months of this year, consumer insolvencies in Ontario are up 30% from 2022 levels. That's bad, but the trend is getting worse. Over the summer, in July and August, the number of calls and emails to our Hoyes Michaelis 310 plan helpline and inquiries on our Hoyes.com website are up over 50% from last summer. I guess that's good for my business, but not so great for everyone else. With that huge explosion in people calling us, I've had lots of people to talk to, and here's what they're telling me. I've hit the wall. What happened? Well, you know what happened. We've been building up debt for years. From 2013 to 2019, Canadian household credit card debt increased from $75 billion to $90 billion. But then the pandemic hit and, well, we couldn't go on vacation or go to a restaurant or get our hair cut, so spending dropped, and we used what money we had to pay down our credit cards. So credit card debt dropped to below $75 billion all the way back to 2013 levels. Even better, because we weren't spending money, our savings increased. The Canadian household savings rate was around zero in the first half of 2018, meaning we didn't save anything. And then the pandemic hit, we stopped spending money, and our savings increased to over 26%. Sounds good, right? Well, as you know, that decline was temporary, and starting in 2021, credit card balances started to increase, and they kept on growing, and now, by the summer of 2023, they were up to $98 billion, far in excess of the pre-pandemic high. Will we hit $100 billion in credit card debt this month? Next month? It seems inevitable. And our savings rate? Well, it was back under 3% for the first quarter of this year, and appears to be trending back towards zero. But why can't we save any money? Why is credit card debt increasing? I think a big reason is that everything costs more. In 2022, the consumer price index, the inflation rate, peaked at over 8%, and while it has come down, in July 2023, it was still well over 3%. That doesn't sound too bad, but when you dig a bit deeper, the annual rate of inflation for shelter was over 5%, and for food, it's almost 8%. If you happen to have a very high income, you spend your money on food and shelter, but also on clothing and recreation and travel and goods, and all of those things have an inflation rate much lower than 3%. So your personal inflation rate depends on what you spend your money on. If you have a high income, your personal rate of inflation is lower than the personal rate of inflation for someone who has to spend a bigger portion of their paycheck on food and shelter. So what do you do if your costs for food and rent are going up faster than your income? Well, you deplete your savings and then you borrow to survive. Savings are down, debt is up, and you hit the wall. And that's where we are now. If you're the average Canadian, times are tough. Now, of course, if you're rich, times are pretty good. If you have no debt and money in the bank, you're looking good. The interest you're earning on your savings is up. If you bought real estate a few years ago, prices are up. If you locked in a 5-year mortgage last year, life is great. Now, of course, if you bought a house or a condo last year and you got a variable rate mortgage, you've got big problems. 5-year mortgage rates for people with perfect credit bottomed at around 1.39% in early 2021. Now the best rate is over 5%, and a standard 5-year fixed mortgage rate is getting close to 7%. And variable rates have gone from around 2% to 6.5%. So if you've got $1 million mortgage with a variable interest rate, your monthly payment could easily have increased from around $4,000 to almost $7,000. And that's assuming a 25-year amortization. If you have an interest-only home equity loan, where you pay interest only, you could easily have had your monthly mortgage payment double in the last 2 years. So what we have is a tale of two economies. High inflation and high interest rates are great if you own an asset like a home or stocks with no debt, and if you have savings, even better, you are earning more. But if you didn't benefit from the big increase in real estate and stock prices, and if you have debt, you are having a tough time. So what's going to happen in the future? I don't know, but I will tell you this. There is always a time lag. When the lockdowns happened in 2020 and the government dramatically increased spending, did inflation immediately increase? No. In fact, it dropped initially because we weren't spending money, and by January of 2021, inflation was still only running at around 1%. It looked like everything was fine. But there's a time lag, and by May of 2022, 2 years after the lockdowns, inflation was up to 8%. It's only now, 3.5 years later, that inflation is falling. There's also a time lag with unemployment. The unemployment rate in Ontario is around 5.5%. It was over 9% in 2021, so today's rate is obviously better. But as the economy slows, employers tend to hoard their workers. They don't want to lay them off at the first sign of a downturn because if things pick up, they don't want to have to hire and train new workers. But if the slowdown continues, layoffs happen. And there are other problems. This was the summer of strikes. Grocery store workers. The writers' strike has shut down a lot of TV and movie production here in Ontario, and the auto workers may also be going on strike. That's not good for anyone. The good news is that in Ontario, the unemployment rate is low and the labor force participation rate is low for people in their prime working years, aged 25 to 54 years old. It's now over 88%, the highest level in over 50 years. That's good news. In other good news, it appears that in the short term, say over the next 6 months, inflation is likely to come down. The consumer price index is influenced by the money supply, which is the amount of money out there we use to buy stuff. It's been dropping, and it appears that the time lag between M2 dropping and the CPI dropping is about 16 months, so it's possible that by Christmas, the inflation rate could be a lot lower than it is now. But what does the long term look like? I don't know. There is no doubt that technology is changing at a rapid rate. Will AI and robots eliminate jobs, or will they allow us to create more with less, which creates jobs? I don't know, but I want to find out. Here's my point. We've got lots to talk about this year on Debt Free in 30. My goal is to have guests who have a different perspective than what you'll hear on the traditional media and give you practical strategies for dealing with our fast-changing economy. For example, next week, Ted will return and will ask the question, is getting a big student loan really worth it? In these difficult times, you need to have some fun. In the next few weeks, Maureen will return and we'll discuss how much you should spend on fun. Joel will be back on the show and we're going to discuss ways to get out of debt. We talked about AI. Scott Theriault will return with some interesting thoughts on whether or not artificial intelligence can help you manage debt. A big story later this year will be self-employed people and businesses who got CEBA loans, which are due to be repaid at the end of this year. We'll discuss the implications of that. And that's just the next 2 months. I'm sure other topics will hit the news and we'll give you our thoughts. We live in interesting times. So as we start season number 10, please subscribe on YouTube for the video version or do what most people do and listen to the audio version while you're going for a walk or on the bus or driving in your car or doing your workout. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major podcasting platforms. It will be an interesting year. A lot of people are hitting the wall. My goal this season is to help you get over the wall. That's our abbreviated season premiere show for today. Until next week when Ted returns, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.